possibilities. Be the voice for human rights. Exploring the crossroads of freedom and foreign policy. Join the conversation. Justice and democracy for Turkey. Save the date, December 10th, 2024, and take a stand for human rights.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Freedom Convention Turkey 2024 on this very important Human Rights Day. And we are now just, doing the 5th annual Freedom Convention, which mainly focuses on Turkey. And as you might all know, that Turkey is at a crossroads, facing a very deepening human rights crisis and a rapid decline in democratic values. And so since 2016, the coup attempt, the government has used mass arrests and political purges and intimidation to silence dissent and tighten its grip on power, while presenting itself as a champion of human rights internationally. Ironic enough, Turkey's actions tell a different story at home of repression, injustice, and growing economic instability. The Freedom Convention Turkey brings together voices from around the world, you'll see, to expose these realities, explore their impact, and rally for global solidarity in the fight for freedom, justice, and democracy. And this is the first session of this year's 5th annual Freedom Convention Turkey. The first session is gonna be focusing on Turkey's domestic and transnational repression alongside its aggressive foreign policy. Yeah, now we will be starting to discuss these issues, and we'll dive into the stark gap between Turkey's claim of subverting human rights and the reality of repression at home. Our panelists will discuss the struggles of the opposition, the challenges faced by human rights groups, and the lack of accountability actually in the country's judicial system, justice system. We'll also explore how these issues impact Turkey's image abroad and what can be done, of course, at the end of the day to support those affected. Before we jump into these discussions, I have an announcement. Regrettably, Mirna Dawson, a respected expert on violence against women and femicide, is unable to join us today due to a severe illness, and we were eagerly actually anticipating her invaluable insights and contributions to these discussions. But we are very saddened by her absence and wishing a swift recovery. Likewise, Jørgen Lorentzen from Norway, a very prominent film director, also is not able to join us today because of the same issue, the sickness. And we deeply regret his absence and looking forward to, seeing him in speedy recovery. Let me introduce our first speaker, Tarik Toros. Tarik Toros, born in Tarsus, Turkey, is a prominent journalist and political commentator. As the former editor-in-chief of Bugün TV, Toros played a key role in opposing the Turkish government's authoritarian turn under President Erdogan. In 2015, he was forcibly removed during a government takeover of Bugün TV and Kanal Türk, marking a major crackdown on press freedom. Currently based in London, in other words, exiled in London, Toros co-founded Moonstar TV, a YouTube platform providing independent journalism for Turkish-speaking audiences. And through his personal channel and other platforms, he analyzes political developments, governance, and social issues ongoing in Turkey, and continuing to provide critical insights into Turkey's democratic challenges. And as the first speaker on such an important, discussion on Turkey, he's gonna picture an overall broader view of Turkey that we could go ahead with other speakers to, narrow down the issues. Tarik, floor is yours.
Thank you, Hafsa. Thank you for your kind words. First, let me sincerely thank you for inviting me to speak to such a distinguished group. Before I begin, let me say this. I have been working to a professional journalist since 1995. In 2016, my family and I emigrated to the UK, London, with no plans of returning. And in English, the concepts of migration and migrants are explained using three terms: migrant, immigrant, and emigrant. Refer to myself as someone who emigrated to the UK, meaning with the intention of not going back. Of course, this doesn't mean I've lost interest in my homeland and its people. On platforms like this, I do my best to share insights about my country and its issues, drawing on my own experiences. And I will continue to do so far as long as I can. Now, I believe it's time to start discussing the topic actually in less than 10 minutes, maybe 10 minutes I've been allotted. Thank you. And let's start. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me again here today. I want to talk about the critical state of human rights in Turkey, the challenges faced by its people, actually, and the growing repression at home and abroad. My goal is to present a clear and straightforward picture of the issues. First, the gap between image and reality. Turkey often portrays itself as a defender of democracy and human rights. Yet the reality is very difficult and different. Leading up to the May 2023 elections, freedoms of assembly, association, and expression were severely restricted. Observers from the OCAC noted that while voters had choices, the playing field was far from fair, with heavy media bias and state interference shaping the outcome. Since 2014, press freedom in Turkey has been steadily eroded. New laws against so-called disinformation use vague definitions to silence critics. Social media has become the last remaining space for dissent. Actually was. Why? Where people document injustices and connect with the outside world, platforms the blue sky actually have emerged at a critical time right now, with traditional media under authoritarian control. For example, Elon Musk. Blue Sky's decentralized structure and resistance to censorship offer a glimmer of hope for preserving independent voices in Turkey right now, by the way. Second thing is political repression and a broken judiciary. It's important, I think. Elections happen in Turkey, but they are rarely free or fair. Opposition parties are hampered by media blackouts, legal harassment, and intimidation. Beyond elections, Turkey's judiciary is far from independent. Judges and prosecutors often act under government orders, particularly in politically sensitive cases. Defendants face unfair trials with secret evidence and restricted access to their legal files. The situation worsened dramatically after the failed coup attempt in 2016. More than 1/3 of judiciary was dismissed, replaced by lawyers loyal to the ruling AKP. This shift eliminated any remaining semblance of judicial independence, ensuring that courts serve political interest rather than justice. The European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg confirmed in the Yalchinkaya case that Turkey's actions actually against members of the Gulcan movement violate international law. Turkey's actions against members of the Gulcan movement violate international law. Despite this ruling, the government has done nothing to improve conditions for thousands affected. Over 3,000 educational institutions remain closed, and private property worth at least $32 billion has been confiscated. The other thing is human rights violations. Turkey has become a country where human rights violations are systematic. Enforced disappearances, arbitrary detentions, and even torture have been widely documented. Activists, journalists, and academics are frequent targets of government repression, and politic figures, by the way. The case of Osman Kavala, for example, who remains imprisoned for life despite ECHR rulings for his release, is a glaring example of the state's disregard for justice. Prisons are overcrowded, healthcare is inadequate, and political prisoners, especially have those accused of ties to the Kurdish or the Gulcan movement, face harsh treatment and solitary confinement. The other thing is transnational repression. This is important. Turkey's authoritarianism doesn't stop at its borders. The government uses its intelligence services to kidnap dissidents from abroad and is targeting those who provide critical information to the Turkish public. Journalists living in exile face constant threats and harassment aimed at silencing them and preventing them from informing society about crucial developments. Turkey doesn't just suppress the free press within its borders. It also blocks independent voices abroad. Platforms like X, formerly Twitter, have supported these efforts by complying with government demands. Less than 2 months ago, more than 150 accounts critical of the Erdogan regime were blocked, denying millions of people their right to access information. This coordinated attack on free speech highlights the lengths to which the Turkish government will go to control the narrative, even beyond its own borders. Among the blocked accounts in my own after 8 years, as well as that of journalist Can Dündar, who has been a vocal critic of the government. After publishing reports on state intelligence operations, Can Dündar faced arrest and an assassination attempt, leading him to live in exile in Germany. Despite his relocation, he continues to face threats and legal actions, including a 27-year prison sentence in absentia. The other thing is the crisis of media freedom. It's important for me. Freedom of expression in Turkey in a state of collapse. Journalists face constant harassment, arrest, and censorship. Dozens remain behind bars, and fear of reprisal forces many to self-censor. Independent media outlets are fined, banned, or shut down altogether. Even social media platforms like Twitter, now X, have faltered under government pressure. Accounts critical of the Erdogan regime, including those of exiled journalist Cevheri Güven, for example, have been blocked following direct requests from the government. Algorithmic suppression has also diminished the reach of independent journalists like Adem Yavuz Arslan and Cemre Birant. In contrast, Blue Sky offers hope with its decentralized governance and resistance to authoritarian demands. I hope. It represents a potential lifeline for free expression in Turkey, but only if it can withstand the pressure. The other thing is a foreign policy of destruction. Turkey's foreign policy mirrors its domestic repression. Military operations in Syria and Iraq often lead to civilian casualties with little accountability. These actions serve to distract from corruption scandals and rally nationalist support at home. As a NATO member, Turkey's purchase of Russian defense systems and inconsistent alliances raise concerns. While it attempts to repair ties with Western nations, domestic repression continues unchecked. Last thing is, what must be done? First, Turkey needs robust democratic reforms, independent courts, a free press, and protections for opposition voices. Second, international actors must go beyond statements and take concentrate actions, such as imposing sanctions or suspending trade privileges. Platforms like X, YouTube, and Blue Sky must resist authoritarian demands and uphold democratic values. Finally, civil society groups, all of them, must join forces to amplify calls for justice. Conclusion, and finally, as you can see, the challenges are immense. The challenges are immense. But the people of Turkey deserve freedom, justice, and a government that respects their rights. Change may not come quickly, but by raising these issues and demanding action, maybe we can help pave the way for a better future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tarik. Actually, this has been a really good, introduction to the case, to, project the upcoming speakers when it comes to their own expressions and expertise. We'll come back to the solutions and outcomes part, maybe if we have time at the end. But we have Gulcan Diril right now with us. We have firstly a powerful, very powerful first-hand account of the atrocities that Tarik actually explained meticulously, which are these, these accounts, these stories are actually reflecting the atrocities committed by Turkey's regime against its own people. This is the story of Gulcan, the daughter of Shimoni and Hurmuz Diril. In Shirnak, the Beit Shabab region, her mother, Shimoni Diril, was found murdered after being missing since January 8, 2020. Yet the whereabouts of her father, Hurmuz Diril, remain unknown. Gulcan, who works as an executive assistant, has relentlessly sought justice for her parents. Despite the authorities, grand statements and promises, those responsible for solving the case have achieved nothing, leaving the family empty-handed as the time continues to pass. Gulcan will share her remarks in Turkish language, and we have an amazing interpreter with us who is gonna reflect her emotions and her experience to the audience effectively. Gulcan, welcome.
Hoş buldum.
Şimdi sen başlayabilirsin. Tercümanımız da aralarda girecek inşallah.
Teşekkür ederim öncelikle bu fırsatı verdiğiniz için. Şimdi bahsedeceğim köy aslında 90'lı yıllardan trajedisini almış, travmasını almış köylerden bir tanesi. E, Yani birçok defa yıkıldı fakat en çok 90'larda bir travma almıştı. Babam oraların yeşermesinde bir gün barışın geleceğine dair umudunu hiç yitirmedi. Dolayısıyla birçokları gibi Avrupa'ya gitmek yerine Türkiye'de kalmaya devam etti.
Burada bir durabiliriz.
Okay.
Our interpreter is here, right? Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
yes, I am here.
Okay.
So I'd like to thank you for giving me the chance to tell you about my story. It's a story that has been seen many times throughout Turkey, but this was one of the worst. So after my father retired, he returned to his beloved village years later instead of going to Europe like many others had done. Evet, devam edin lütfen.
Annem ve babam 2014-2015 senesinde bu çözüm sürecinin çözüm süreciyle birlikte hani oraların barış geleceğine inanarak tekrar yaşam şartlarından oluşarak devamlı köyde kalmaya başlamışlardı.
So from 2014, 2015 onwards, my father believed that the peace process would bring peace actually to his village, which had been burned and destroyed many times. He never lost hope in the revival of those lands, and he decided to try again.
Köy merkezden uzak, yani en yakın köye yürüme mesafesi 4,5-5 saati bulabiliyordu.
So this village was very remote. The nearest other village was like a 5-hour walk away.
Köy jandarmanın denetiminde, tamamı Süryani Keldani bir köydü.
It was entirely a Syriac Chaldean village, which was governed under the supervision of the gendarmerie.
Yaz aylarında 5 ev, yani yaklaşık 20-30 kişiyi bulabiliyordu. Kış aylarında ise sadece 2 ev ve 3 kişi yaşıyordu.
In the summer, there would live there only around 5 families, meaning 20 to 30 people, while in the winter, only 2 families and 3 people remained.
Annem ve babam ile 8 Ocak 2020 tarihinden itibaren telefonla iletişim kuramadık.
The last time I was able to speak to my parents by phone was on January 8th, 2020.
Bunun üzerine abim köye 12 Ocak'ta varabildi ve onları evde bulamadı.
So my brother went to the village on January 12th, but he couldn't find them there.
Köyde kalan diğer 3. şahıs annem ve babam bir yere kadar girip akşama gelemeyeceklerini söyledi.
The only other person living at the village, that third person, said that my parents had gone somewhere and would not return by evening.
Aslında aralarındaki geçmişe bağlı husumetlere baktığımızda evlerini, hayvanlarını kendisine emanet edip gitmeleri mümkün değildi aslında.
But actually, my parents had many fights with this person, many conflicts. So it was impossible that they would have entrusted their home and their animals to him and just leave like that.
Aynı gün içinde abime PKK tarafından götürüldüklerini ve hani bahara serbest bırakılacaklarını söylüyor. Fakat 7 Ocak tarihine kadar bölgede asker operasyon olduğu için PKK'nın bölgede çok da bulunmasının mümkün olmadığını biliyoruz.
Later that day, the same person suddenly claimed that my parents had been taken by the PKK and that they would be released in the spring. But this wasn't likely because the gendarmerie had been very active there until the 7th of January. So the PKK could not have been very active.
Aslında bu kişinin çok fazla yalan söyleyen birisi olduğunu biliyorduk. Fakat annem ve babamın ölüm fikri bizden çok uzaktı. Çünkü kimseye bir zararları yoktu.
We knew that this person was always telling lies, but we couldn't believe that our parents could have been killed because they had no enemies.
İlgili birim olan jandarmaya haber verilmişti. Hava şartları denilerek 4 gün sonra evin etrafında kısa mesafeli bir arama yapıldı. Fakat sonuçsuz dönüldü. Herhangi bir açıklama yapılmadı. Yolda gösterilmedi.
So we informed the gendarmerie, which was the relevant authority. Well, because of the weather conditions, only a brief search was conducted around the house, and that happened only 4 days later. It yielded no results, and the gendarmerie didn't give us any explanations or any guidance.
Yani bu durum için sadece tek bir yorum yapıldı. O da şöyle denildi. Görmemeleri gereken bir duruma şahit olabilecekleri söylenildi.
The only thing the gendarmerie said was that they may have witnessed something they weren't supposed to see.
Kış bitti, karlar eridi, bahar da geldi. Kendilerinden bir haber gelir diye aslında umut ettik.
So winter passed, the snow melted, spring arrived, and we were fervently hoping for some news from my parents.
70 gün sonra annemin öldürülmüş bedenini dere kenarında abim tesadüfen buluyor.
70 days later, by sheer chance, my brother found my mother's murdered body near a creek.
Aslında bakarsak annem ilk günden öldürülmüş, dereye atılmıştı.
And we understood that actually my mother had been killed on the first day and thrown into the creek.
Raporda beden travmasına bağlı ölüm deniliyordu. Yani hayattayken kemiklerini kırmış, işkence etmişlerdi.
The autopsy report said that her death was due to bodily trauma, meaning that while she was alive, her bones had been broken and she'd been tortured.
Sırtında ayrıca yani o köy çok sessiz bir ortam ve sırtında ayrıca sesinin duyulmamasının imkanı olmayan bir kurşun izi vardı.
Additionally, there was a bullet mark on her back, and you can't imagine that this bullet would have gone in without making a sound because the village was so quiet.
İlk günden yanlış ve eksik yönlendirildik. Yetkililerin böyle çözümden çok hep bahane üretildi. İşte kar var denildi, doğa şartları denildi.
From the very beginning, we were continuously misled and misinformed. The authorities gave us excuses rather than solutions. They made up excuses such as the snow or weather conditions.
Annemin cenazesini bile haber verdikten 17 saat sonra almaya geldiler.
Even after we reported the discovery of my mother's body, it took them 17 hours to come and collect it.
Bu bir cinayetti. Yani çok açıktı. 3 kişilik köyde yalnızca bir kişi hayattaydı. Yani dolayısıyla üçüncü şahsın katillerden biri olduğu çok açıktı. Fakat buna rağmen 1,5 sene boyunca serbest dolaştı.
This was murder. It was pure and simple murder. In a village of 3 people, only one individual remained alive. It was obvious that this person was the murderer. Despite this, he roamed free for a year and a half.
Yargılanmaları 1,5 sene sonra başlandı ve bu davada 3 kişi yargılandı fakat bir kişi tutuklandı. Diğerleri serbest bırakıldı.
And the trial began only after a year and a half. 3 people were tried, and only one was arrested. The others were released.
Dosyamız şu anda Yargıtay'da, yargılamalar devam ediyor.
So the case is currently at the Court of Cassation, and the trial is continuing.
Bizim yakındığımız nokta şu, başından beri etkili bir soruşturma yapılmadı. Deliller zamanında toplanmadı, sonuçları zamanında çıkmadı. Her şey zamanla birlikte aşındırıldı.
Our complaint is that from the very beginning, the investigation was not conducted effectively. Actually, there was no effective investigation. Evidence wasn't collected on time, the results were delayed, and everything was lost, eroded over time.
Yani bu kişi annemi öldürmekle yargılandı ve tutuklandı. Peki bu kişi babam Hürmüz Diril'in olduğunu gerçekten bilmeyecek mi? Yani annemi öldüren babamın ne olduğunu bilmeyecek mi?
So, as I said, one person was tried and arrested. But is it possible that this person doesn't know what happened to my father, Hürmüz Diril?
Cinayet daha çok yani üçüncü şahısla ne yazık ki aynı soy ismi taşıyoruz. Yani annemle babamın kuzeniydi. Ve cinayet aile arasında izlenimi verildi.
So this third person, unfortunately, carries the same last name as we do. He was actually a cousin of my parents, and So the impression was given that this was a family dispute.
Ama biz şuna inanıyoruz. Eğer bu cinayet sadece aile arasında olsaydı muhtemelen çoktan çözülmüş, babam da bulmuş olurdu. Fakat HTS kayıtlarından bunun sadece aile arasında olmadığını biliyoruz.
But if this had really been a family dispute, it would have been resolved by now. We would have found my father's body by now as well. But we know from call records that it was not a family dispute.
Diyelim ki bu cinayet aile arasında. Peki bu cinayet aile arasında olsa dahi, yani Şimuni ve Hürmüzler'in yaşam hakkı aranmayacak mı gerçekten? Ya da katiller cezalarını çekmeyecek mi?
But even if it had been a family dispute, don't Shimuni and Hurmuz Diril need to be defended despite this? Shouldn't their murderers face justice?
Katiller cezalarını, yani artık biraz umudumuzu yitirmeye başladık ama bundan da yani kesinlikle vazgeçmiyoruz tabii ki de. Ve cezasız kalan suç kadar cesaretlendirici bir şey olmadığını hepimiz biliyoruz.
We're losing hope, but of course we'll continue to struggle, and we all know that there's nothing more emboldening than an unpunished crime.
Bu cinayet yaklaşık 5 senedir aydınlatılmadı ve biz artık sadece iki nedene bağlıyoruz.
So this crime hasn't been investigated, hasn't come to light for a year now, and we have only one hope.
Ya gerçekten yani bunlar ötekidir, Hristiyandır. Evet, bu bölgelere gelmesinler ve bir an önce gitsinler. Boşaltmak istiyorlar. Oralara dönmemizi istemiyorlar. Ve Hristiyan olduğumuz için tamamen boş verdiler. Veya da gerçekten bu cinayetin aydınlanmasını istemeyen, tepeden baskılayan bir güç var.
There are only two solutions here. Either they attacked us because we're Christians, because they want us to leave there, and they just want to get rid of all the Christians in the region, or else there's something else going on here, something that's going on from top to bottom, some kind of political pressure.
Davaya
And they don't
sahip
want this
çıkan,
crime to be resolved. I'm sorry. And they don't want this crime to be resolved. Evet, pardon.
davaya sahip çıkan, varlığının desteğini hissettiren insan sayısı sayılı kaldı.
There are
Türkiye'de
only
her acının mahallesi var. Fakat biz yalnız kaldık.
the number of people supporting and advocating for this case has dwindled. And you know, in Turkey, every tragedy has its own neighborhood, but we've been left alone.
Hatta zaman geçtikçe Şimuni ve Hürmüzlerin unutulduklarını dahi söylemek mümkün.
And over time, we can even say that Shimuni and Hurmuzdiril have been forgotten.
Türkiye'de çok fazla adaletsizlik var ve çok fazla acı var. Yani bunun farkındayız.
There's too much injustice and too much pain in Turkey. We're aware of this.
Yani ben hep şuna inanırım. Her yük kendine ağır ve her acı kendine biricik.
I've always believed that every burden feels heavy to its bearer and every pain is unique.
Biz böyle ölüm ve kayıp arasında dipsiz bir karanlığa terk edildik.
We've been abandoned in an abyss of darkness between death and loss.
Durumu kabullenmek mümkün değil. Ömrümüz yettiğince zaten adaleti aramaya devam edeceğiz.
It's impossible to accept the situation or come to terms with what has happened. For as long as we live, we'll continue to seek justice.
Ben her defasında dile getirdiğimde ve herkesin de sormasını istediğim, bu bir cinayet ve cinayetin sadece bir katili tutuklu. Yani Hürmüz Diril'in akıbetini sorabileceğimiz bir katil varken benim babam neden bulunmuyor? Neden hakkında maktul olmasının dışında bir şey öğrenemiyoruz?
I want all of you to ask this question. I mean, we know that this is a murder, but only one perpetrator is in custody. Well, we have this killer. Why can't we question him about the fate of Hürmüz Diril? Why hasn't our father been found? Why can't we learn anything beyond the possibility that he's a victim?
Bireysel olarak da, toplumsal olarak da, dernek ve sivil kuruluşlar olarak da yetkililere ve İçişleri Bakanlığı'na görevlerini, sorumluluklarını her daim hatırlatmamız gerektiğine inanıyorum.
I believe that individually, socially, and through associations and civil organizations, we must constantly remind the authorities and the Ministry of Interior of their duties and responsibilities.
Yeah.
Teşekkür ederim.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gulcan. Firstly, I want to say something in Turkish and then I'm gonna go ahead again in English. Gülcan, çok teşekkürler. Ağır bir şeyi bizimle tekrar anlatıp yaşarken, paylaşırken tekrar yaşadığını hissediyorum. Buna rağmen geldiğin ve bunu paylaştığın için teşekkür ederim. So I thanked Gülcan, even though it's always, the same pain, even if it's been, a lot of time since their, being enforced disappearances. Gulcan has been relentlessly working for justice, looking for justice. And I know that it's a really heavy burden to even tell the story. And we see that, enforced disappearances, torture, most importantly, impunity, they are really, really big issues in Turkey that we will touch on with upcoming speakers. So finally Gülcan told us is very important. Without constantly, relentlessly, we have to ask, we have to remind the, responsible people, those in power, for justice, for, asking to do their own, jobs, responsibilities. That's very important, not giving up. So thank you, Gülcan, for reminding us today all these issues again. Now we have Vanya Womack. Vanya Womack is the Executive Director of Refugees Unknown, Stories Untold, and a leading advocate for human rights and social justice. With over 2 decades of experience in business, higher education, and global leadership, she has worked on initiatives in conflict zones, in Libya, in Israel. Vanya also serves as an adjunct instructor at Villanova University and Cedar Crest College, where she teaches on human rights and global leadership. Vanya is actually deeply committed to supporting refugees and advocating for those escaping tyrannical regimes. I sincerely have been witnessing how committed she is as a close friend. I know she, beyond borders, she is really, very caring about people, their well-beings. Vanya, thank you for joining us today. Even though it's the last minute invitation. Thank you.
That's all right. Thank you. Thank you all for having me. Thank you, Hafsa, and for AST here. So I want to just kind of start off a little bit, and I'm going to give a little bit of background, but I'm going to concentrate on talking about the women and children in Turkish prisons and a study that has been done around that, some of those issues, those human rights violation issues. But in order to provide a little bit of this background, I think it's important because I can tell you that students from Villanova will be watching this at a later point. And there are also people that are watching that may not be as familiar. So let me just start with this, is that we all have a responsibility, right, for issuing what I call a call to conscience. So a call to conscience and standing together to be able to defend people's dignity, people's freedom, and people's human rights. And to do this, we've got to be more knowledgeable about the human rights suffering in the world as a whole. Oftentimes, we're hearing about things in the news. We hear about things that are happening like right now. And, it's interesting because when I speak to audiences across the US or across Europe, people that are unfamiliar with the human rights suffering that's happening in Turkey, will say to me, but wait a minute, don't Europeans and Americans go to Turkey for vacation? Things like that. So, there are extreme human rights violations that do happen in Turkey, and I try to make sure that people are aware of that through stories of people that have experienced these human rights. Not only have they happened from even before 2016, but they continue to happen today. So, I try to make an awareness, a call to action, and to justice for those that have experienced religious or even political oppression. So let me start by this. Hafsa, can I share my slides here, or do you have them? How do you?
You should be able to, just a sec.
Okay.
Can you try? You should be able to right now.
Hold on a second here.
Let me see if we can see you. Yeah.
You got it? Okay.
Yeah.
So let me just go into slideshow here real quick.
Yeah.
Okay. So just gives you a little bit of background here. All right, so you're going to see some artwork that's here, that's done. You're not able to see the authors of the artwork. I apologize. They're underneath the screen there. But I want to take you on a journey for a second into what's happening to women and children that are in Turkish prisons. So I'm going to kind of delve into the depths of this crisis through the lens of looking at this groundbreaking study that was done. So this research was conducted between August 2022 and October of 2022, and it was using interviews and data that was collected by NGO, Advocates of Silence Turkey, others, with over 180 women in prison that were there for at least 6 months. And most of them were there, though, for 49 months or longer. And this would have been after 2016. So the study really highlights the human rights violations that these women experienced. So, you know, not only are these unimaginable hardships that they faced, but the challenges, you know, that they faced of the very principles that we all hold dear. So their stories kind of demand attention, I believe. Their stories demand compassion and giving us this kind of unwavering attempt to work for justice. Now, I'm going to use some pseudonyms as I go through here. But I first want to kind of talk about what is arbitrary detention, because sometimes, you know, I'm asked about that. So it's a severe breach of human rights that entails wrongful arrest, incarceration, and imprisonment of someone without appropriate legal reasons or due process. So women have been particularly affected by this issue. Right? Numerous publications and human rights organizations, they've highlighted the examples of women being detained arbitrarily as part of kind of this broader crackdown on perceived dissent in the aftermath of the failed coup attempt. So let me tell you the story. There's some artwork there that I think is very telling of things that happen in prison. I want to tell you the story of Garibay Gazar, and her story started in 2014 when she was 21 years old. Her older brother was killed in a protest. While her family was mourning his death, her other brother was paralyzed by a shooting that broke out at the police station. And he was there inquiring about the murder of his sibling. So by the age of 23, in 2016, Garibay, a representative of the Democratic Republic's Party of a pro-Kurdish organization in her district, that year she was arrested on charges of terrorism based on her political work. Now, according to a criminal complaint that was filed by her lawyers, she objected to her arrest and she was subjected to violence by the prison guards. She was dragged to the floor and taken to the sponge room, a room that's prepared for torture and insulated in order to prevent any sound from spilling out. She was subjected to severe torture, to harassment and rape while being transferred from one prison to another. And she wanted to convey this to her family and her lawyers, but she stayed in solitary confinement for 22 days, unable to do that. After leaving solitary confinement, she attempted then to write a letter upon which she was taken back to the sponge room for unruly behavior. And she conveyed her experiences to her family then over the phone as a last resort. She was able to do that. And her lawyers, even after this, made over 22 inquiries. So she remained in solitary confinement where she committed suicide in her cell. The ministry had not opened or read the motions by her lawyers or felt the need to respond to prison administration. And after her death, the torture and discrimination continued. She was not given a funeral vehicle. Her family had to transport her body in the back of a pickup truck. And so that's just one story there. Let me tell you another story here. Another participant in the study was 31 years old. She was an expelled teacher. And she told about her experiences, and I'm going to quote her using her own words. She says, "I miscarried in prison. I had informed them that I was a risk of miscarriage when I was arrested, but I was ignored. I was not allowed to take my medication. There was no referral to the hospital for 5 days. And after 5 days, when the issue was brought up on social media, only then they referred me. Being taken in a cage compartment of a transport vehicle, having a gynecological examination with my hands cuffed, walking around the hospital with 5 Army officials and 2 guards around me. So, those stories that I just mentioned are blatant violation of the right to life, right? Sick prisoners are not released despite the law, and torture and violent crimes are routinely covered up. And there are thousands more outside of this study who have lost children due to mental and physical stress, as well as those, who have drowned while attempting to flee Turkey to get to Greece. And I know that because I've met them. And they're very, very hard stories to tell. So, women, I want people to know that women are exposed to ill treatment, to human rights violations when they're in arbitrary detention. And this is important. It's not just important for us people in human rights. It's important for faith leaders, right? Interfaith leaders need to be aware of this, community leaders, ordinary citizens, because when we're armed with knowledge, we have more insight into how we might be able to work together in our unique ways to make a call to action to contribute to restoring justice and human rights in Turkey. So I wanted to also just give you a little bit of current information to talk about how this is still happening now. Yes, we have a lot of information in the study that was done, and we're working on some reports and some things like that. It's also important to note that you all also have to be very careful, right? The the arms of a regime like Erdogan's are very long, and many of us on this panel know that. So the people that took the information for the study, that did the data, we're trying to protect their privacy as well, because they are located in Turkey. They're all also located here in the United States. But the important part about this study is that we have it now. So let me go on and tell you just a little bit about some things that have happened just recently so that you're aware. So this is in October here. Turkish police conducted a large-scale raid across 66 provinces. They detained 459 individuals for alleged links to the Hizmet movement. Turkish prosecutors say that these detainees promote the religious movement through social media. Through payphones and the use of Bylock. And for those that might not understand what Bylock is an app that's downloaded to your phone. It's very similar to WhatsApp or Signal that we might use here in the US. So that app has been banned in Turkey. Turkish police consider just phone calls made from payphones allegedly associated with the movement as a grounds for detention, even without recorded conversations. Right. Another thing that can cause detention is if you are helping another family. So, for example, if a couple that has, maybe 3 small children, if they're both arrested and taken in, it's very likely that maybe a neighbor will take care of those 3 children if a family member is not available. And also if the kids are not at a young age where they could go into the prison with the mother. So if those children are being taken by someone who cannot support them, other people in the community would bring food or would help supply, some funds for those kids for what they need. And the human rights violations that happen around that is those people are arrested then. So it goes far beyond even just what I'm telling you now. But so Turkish officials banned the Hizmet movement as a terrorist organization right after the coup, blaming it, for the coup in 2016. And since then, more than 700,000 individuals have been prosecuted for supposed links to the movement. Currently, there are at least 13,000 people that remain in Turkish prisons, and that number actually may be higher right now. They're either in pre-trial detention or they're serving sentences for terrorism-related charges, related to being somehow in any way connected to Hizmet, which also could include having a magazine, a children's magazine, delivered to your home. So I also want to make sure that it's, and it's important to me to mention that the founder of Hizmet movement, Fethullah Gulen, passed away here in the United States, here in Pennsylvania, where I'm located, at the age of, I believe, 83. On October 20th. And that last raid that I just talked about was the largest raid since his death. So my organization, RUSU, we strongly denounce, right, any kind of arbitrary detention of individuals based solely on any kind of suspected ties to a religious group. We are calling for the immediate release of all unlawfully retained or detained persons and urge the Erdogan regime also to uphold the rights of the Turkish people, including their right to religious freedom, freedom of expression, freedom of association, and access to justice. Mass arrests and detention, right now, over 8,800 detained in 1 year, including children with the claims of torture, denial of legal counsel and inadequate medical care. They target families, parents arrested for supporting their children with actions as simple as teaching English, right? Can be labeled as a terrorism crime. Transnational abductions, which is a big one. Turkish nationals are forcibly returned through state-sponsored renditions, violating international law. We worked on a case with that just not very long ago that happened in Kenya, unfortunately. And terrorist gray lists as well. So arbitrary inclusion of dissidents, lawyers, and activists, incentivizing false accusations and endangering lives. And one last one here, surveillance abuse, which I know that our journalist here talked about that. You know, that's flawed BILOC data, you know, apps that have been downloaded that maybe people never even used. But false data is used to convict thousands without proper evidence. And so just finishing here to go back to kind of that study that's been done and why it's so important is that we have these stories of women that are pregnant, that are handcuffed to, you know, their hospital beds, that are transported with not even having 24 hours in the hospital after they have given birth with their babies. We've got, you know, prison conditions that are in no shape or form to have children in, much less women in, because many of the prisons, or most of the prisons, maybe even all of the prisons, I'm not quite sure, they were created for men, right? So they are not conducive to women with young children at all. So I hope that gives you a little bit of an idea and some insight into some of the human rights abuses, gives you a couple stories, and lets you know about this study that is coming out in regards to these women and children that are in Turkish prisons. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maya. You actually, you know, after those, you know, broader pictures of Turkey in terms of human rights, Gulcan's personal story, and then now you talked about a lot of personal stories. These are really important, and these mean a lot in terms of understanding the deep, you know, pain, deep impact, what's going on in Turkey. Thank you. Now we have Michael Pollack from the United Kingdom. Michael Pollack is a barrister specializing in public international law, international crime, human rights, private prosecutions, strategic litigation, and serious criminal offenses. He's known for his work before international courts, United Nations bodies, human rights-related arbitrations, and proceedings for a while. Michael was awarded the prestigious International Bar Association's Outstanding Young Lawyer in 2021. Congrats. The award is given to one younger lawyer every year in recognition of their excellence in their work and achievements in their career to date, but also a commitment to professional and ethical standards, as well as a commitment to the larger community. Michael Pollack also serves as the Director of Justice Abroad, where he has represented families and individuals in various cases, including those detained arbitrarily or involved in suspicious death circumstances. And they just very recently released their report in terms of the weaponizing laws practices of Turkish government. Michael, floor is yours, and thank you so much for joining us in between court hearings. I can see that you are just, between these court hearings. Thank you. You're muted, Michael. Could you please unmute yourself or?
Hafsa, thank you so much for such a kind introduction. People with sharp eyes will spot that I'm dressed a little bit differently than everybody else. I've got my wig and I've just come out of court, albeit online court. We've been hearing some fantastic speeches about the repression faced by ordinary people in Turkey, which is absolutely shocking. And some people might think that once you leave, things get better. Unfortunately, that's not always the case. What I'll be speaking about mostly today, I've done a number of cases, a number of actions in relation to human rights abuses in Turkey. The one I want to speak about today is financial transnational repression. So when individuals, whether they're journalists or teachers or business people, when they manage to escape from the Turkish regime, the government goes after them and makes things very, very difficult for them to live an ordinary life outside of Turkey. I completed this work with Belgium, a Turkish lawyer, Ali Yildiz, and it's a report you can find called The Weaponization of Anti-Terror Financing Measures, the Turkish government's new transnational repression tool to silence its critics. I think Ali is probably watching, and if he can, he'll share a link to that report. And I do encourage people, if you can or if you want to use that. We worked on this on behalf of the International Journalists Association, and it's quite a comprehensive report, including some of our own research about the way international financial bodies were being used as a tool of repression.
Just a sec, I'll on Twitter, on X, I'll share the link to the report through the AST's account. So thank you for reminding that.
Thank you so much. So the transnational repression has been going on for some time, following the 2016 coup attempt, where 1.5 million individuals were put under criminal investigation. 622,000 people have been subject to criminal investigation, and 301,000 people have been arrested by the police. The statistics from the Turkish Justice Ministry sets out that there's been an increasing use of anti-terrorism provisions in Turkey. The statistics are quite startling. Turkish prosecutors have filed more than 420,000 charges under Article 314 of the terrorism provisions between 2013 and 2020. So a huge number of cases. The Grand Chamber of the European Court of Human Rights has stated that Turkey's provisions in relation to terrorism lacked the quality of law in that they were unforeseeable and therefore contrary to Article 6. But the repression has not just stopped with prosecutions. A huge amount of assets have been seized. After 2016, a total of $32 billion worth of assets were confiscated or taken over by the government. According to Freedom House, they say that transnational repression is a phenomenon which is becoming the new normal, where authoritarian states, so we're not just talking about Turkey, other authoritarian states are quite adept at transnational repression as well, especially states such as China. They reach across national borders to silence dissent, so making it very hard for Turkish people to speak out about what's happening in their own country to their communities. After 2016, the campaign from the Turkish government meant that individuals who left Turkey were no longer safe, and that crackdown has involved numerous extradition requests, the use of Interpol's red notice system, the lost and stolen travel document database as well to stop Turkish nationals from being able to travel, as well as illegal rendition. And there's an international matter I'm working on at the moment which concerns rendition from Middle Eastern and Asian countries by the Turkish regime outside any legal processes, bringing people back into Turkey where they're subject to torture and inhuman conditions in prison. The Gulenists, of course, have been top of the international political agenda for Turkey, and Turkey has sent more than 1,000 extradition requests to 109 countries, even where that doesn't end up in a successful extradition, as is the case in most European states, the United Kingdom, and other democracies around the world. That does have an effect of forcing Turkish nationals to be on alert and having to deal with the legal proceedings. So it's another form of transnational repression. In 2011, Turkey was placed onto the grey list by the Financial Action Task Force, which is an international body which deals with the financial practices of different states. They were placed on that list because it was said that they had inefficient practices in relation to money laundering and anti-terrorism financing. Therefore, Turkey enacted the law on prevention of financing of terrorism in 2013, and they were removed from the grey list in 2014. They amended their law in 2021 in an attempt to stay off that Financial Action Task Force grey list. I'm not going to take you through, you'll be thankful, all the Turkish terrorism provisions, but under Turkish law, there's a very broad allowance for the authorities to go after people as terrorists, to freeze their assets. And there's very little you can do about it if it actually happens to you. There is very little avenue to challenge what the authorities do to you. And it says that, just simply, I think this might explain it well, that the decision to freeze assets takes place, it shall be immediately implemented, and then it gets submitted to Ankara Assize Court, and then the court within 5 days shall consider the matter and decide whether to hold or dismiss the decision to freeze assets. So it's a very difficult, punitive regime for those within Turkey, and this has been used to target those who've actually managed to escape as well. The main victims of this law have been members of the Gulen movement, but it's also been used against Kurdish nationals and other people that the Turkish regime think are in opposition to it. In November 2021, the FATF once again placed Turkey on its grey list. The president of FATF said this: Turkey needs to show it's effectively tackling complex money laundering cases and show it's pursuing terrorist financing prosecutions and prioritizing cases of UN designated terrorist organizations such as ISIS and Al-Qaeda. And he added that the FATF was aware of human rights organizations' concerns over Turkey's treatment of its civil society. That didn't stop Turkey, who continued to target those who it sees as being in opposition to it. The interesting point in relation to terrorism, of course, is that there's no definitive international definition of it. And in relation to the Gulen movement, there's no country other than Turkey which regards the Gulen movement as a terrorist organization. And so the huge number of people targeted, 670 were targeted over alleged affiliation with the Gulen movement. This included journalists, academics, authors, teachers, and lawyers, many of whom were granted asylum by Western democratic countries because of their mistreatment by the Turkish government. And journalists have been have borne the brunt of these measures. Often those journalists are vocal critics of the Turkish government outside Turkey, because it's much easier to be able to speak out against Turkey when you're not within that country, of course, because of the conditions there. Those journalists have provided wide coverage of the torture, the arbitrary imprisonment and corruption taking place in Turkey. So what they actually do is very important to the development of Turkey and for others to realize what's actually happening within Turkey. And you can see why the Turkish government wanted to target them. We don't know how many people this happens to, but I'm sure there are many journalists outside of Turkey who are no longer able to speak up about what's happening within Turkey because they're worried about being targeted either financially themselves or having their families targeted within Turkey. The financial repression of journalists and other government critics has long been used by Turkey, and how it works is Turkey will designate people as terrorists, will seize their Turkish-based assets, and then will communicate out to private international financial intelligence agencies what's happened, or simply list those people as being involved in terrorism. I've been involved in a number of cases where we've reached out to due diligence companies who've had individuals on their databases listed as terrorists and being on the run from the Turkish government. Some of the largest of those databases are Refinitiv, WorldCheck, some of you may know, and LexisNexis as well. What happens is when you go overseas, say you escape from Turkey, you end up in Australia, New Zealand, or Norway, wherever you end up, and you apply for a bank account, they will go to these private companies to check on you, on your background. And there'll be fake information listed against you as being a terrorist. So sometimes it happens when people are first applying for financial access. Other times you could be doing quite well for yourself, starting a business in a democracy, following the law of the new country that you've escaped to, and suddenly your bank account's closed and you won't know why. Or in some cases, you can't travel on public transport any longer because your travel card no longer works. So you're going to touch in on a bus or on a tube or on a train, and you can no longer do that because of these due diligence companies and what Turkey has done to use them to attack individuals. So it is serious stuff. It's not it's nothing to be laughed about. It's very serious for those who are trying to make their way and survive outside of Turkey, having been forced to leave. We did a survey of this, and I think this is quite helpful. It's a small sample survey, but what we say this shows is that this isn't being used to claw back or prevent terrorist financing. It's being used to punish people, because out of 34 people we spoke to, 17 of them did not have any assets in Turkey. So, and 12 of the 17 had assets already frozen. So they're using these measures even against people they've already taken control of their assets, because they're going after them overseas, because they're targeting them overseas, trying to make their life as difficult as possible. You can have a look at that survey. I think it's quite interesting.
I just shared it on X, so yeah, people can have access to it. You know what, actually, Michael, sorry for interrupting, but that's an important point that I want to jump in. You haven't interviewed me in that survey, but I am also among those people who is blacklisted, whose assets were seized, even though I have nothing back in Turkey. But it's making lives miserable here to have bank accounts, even to have IDs, and to continue your lives abroad, while you have already facing lots of legal problems. Yeah, that's very important.
And also, I think there's a point to this as well, that not only are the Turkish government making it difficult for opposition figures, they're generally just making it difficult for anyone with a Turkish name as well, because banks and other financial institutions have to spend longer looking at them and considering whether to allow them financial access. Die Welt in Germany reported that Deutsche Bank had closed the accounts of some of their customers simply for having Turkish origins. The way the Turkish government is behaving by designating huge numbers of people as terrorists, when under any reasonable view they're not carrying out any terrorist-like activities, is actually damaging the ability of Turkish people, whatever their beliefs, whatever their background, to do business around the world. The online payment platforms have become aware of the decrees through WorldCheck, Refinitiv, as I spoke about, and LexisNexis as well. So that's what they're doing, and in relation to this, we put together a report which is useful for advocacy, and we made a few recommendations in relation to what we think governments can do. And what we're saying is backed up by the European Court of Human Rights, the UN Human Rights Committee, the Special Rapporteur on Human Rights while countering terrorism, and the High Commissioner for Human Rights, because they've all expressed their concern that Turkey uses counterterrorism legislation to attack individuals, and that legislation doesn't meet the requirements for accessibility and foreseeability. So just coming finally, we will come down to what we recommend in our report. If you look at the report, you'll see what the main problems are. I think you probably pick it up about how difficult it makes for people to live their lives, to survive, to be able to criticize the Turkish government outside of Turkey through these measures. The FATF standards are important, of course, we think, because of course financial systems shouldn't be used for terrorism funding, and that's a positive thing. The FATF is addressing that. But Turkey, by concentrating and using their measures where there is no against people who cannot be classed as terrorists, actually is contrary to what FATF is intending. Because if they're concentrating all these resources and all these measures against people who aren't terrorists, then there's a high chance that they're not actually carrying out their mandate to prevent proper terrorism funding. So that's a very important point to it. We think the FATF needs to have another look at Turkey and place them on that grey list again, because of the way the FATF standards are being applied by Turkey against political opponents rather than genuine terrorists. Especially given that the measures are being used against the Gulcan movement and other movements as well, and other individuals based on ethnicity and belief, which should be protected under international law. The Turkish government has been quite successful in influencing multinational financial institutions and financial data processing companies to target dissidents living abroad. The FATF needs to be more clear about the provisions that they espouse not being used to target human rights defenders and civil society actors. They should launch a UN periodic review style monitoring cycle on states' compliance with the FATF standards and human rights. We think you cannot separate the two. You cannot have financial anti-terrorism standards without having the human rights aspect to it, because then you get countries using it for their own reasons rather than actually using it to target terrorist funding as it's supposed to be targeted at. There should be an abusers list to name and shame those states who abuse these tools. The FATF needs to work with human rights groups and international organizations, and also to remind financial institutions that financial inclusion is a fundamental right. It's a fundamental to survival to be able to access financial institutions now, as we know. So governments around the world should pass measures to protect their citizens from international measures such as these to repress them once they've left Turkey. The financial institutions need to have more clear and transparent measures to be able to challenge listings. It's very hard to challenge listings on some of these databases. First, you have to approach them and ask them to actually disclose whether you're on a list or not. The first thing you'll find out is your card doesn't work. You can't travel by public transport, or you can't get a visa to go somewhere if that country is using these databases. So there needs to be more transparency in relation to listing. There needs to be due diligence carried out by the financial institutions. If they're continuously getting contacted or receiving information from places such as Turkey, where there's no rule of law, there's no fair judicial system, then they need to be very wary about adding terrorist behind someone's name because of the effects that will have on them and their family. And there needs to be some education of those financial institutions to ensure that they understand that when these kind of designations come from repressive states, they shouldn't treat it as a conclusive evidence of criminality. It hasn't gone through any process which gives it any force. So there's a lot that can be done both by the FATF, national governments, and by those financial institutions as well. And I encourage you all to use this report if you can to put pressure on them to stop this type of transnational repression. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael, for this important actually information. There are sometimes, visible human rights violations that you could go and take action. And there are sometimes, I don't want to say invisible, but it's just the person that who, goes through the problem and does not know what to do, does not know where to go. So this report, actually, I just had a look at it as the victim, one of the victims of these, financial weaponizing of laws, transnational repression, and it's a very important source actually to see what's going on. Your recommendations for a lot of parties and for the victims or for the persecuted ones, impacted ones, as a guide. Thank you so much for all the work that you've been doing with your colleagues. Thank you. And now I know that we are a little bit, passing our time, but please bear with me because these are very, historical and archival things that we are talking today about. So maybe we could, go extend timing like 5-7 minutes, but that's already, all okay. Just bear with us. And now we have. Sorry, another very, significant expert among us, Elodie Trenches. Elodie, I'm hoping that I'm pronouncing your name correctly. So Dr. Trenches is a seasoned expert in international law and human rights with over 15 years of experience. And she has worked as a senior lecturer for UNITAR, teaching international law and human rights to global leaders, and as a human rights officer at the United Nations Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. And Dr. Trenches also advises organizations on strategic advocacy and litigation, leveraging her expertise to advance justice and human rights worldwide. And I know that Elodie is also working with the impacted, persecuted people of Turkey. So Elodie, the floor is yours. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, dear Hafsa, for the warm introduction. And yes, it is truly an honor for me to join you today on this Human Rights Day, actually. And first of all, I would like to thank Gulcan for her brave testimony today. And on this day, all my thoughts actually are for the countless victims of unspeakable human rights violations all around the globe. And also to echo Vonia's speech, I would like to dedicate my participation to all the mothers in prisons with the babies, or also all the mothers in prison separated from their children because they are victims of arbitrary convictions in Turkey. And this is exactly why I am here with you today to discuss the human rights situation in Turkey, and most particularly one of the most aggressive tactics of transnational repression by Turkey, and I will talk about extraterritorial abductions. So it's quite a troubling phenomenon that has grown significantly since 2016. And Turkey have orchestrated over 100 abductions and enforced returns from more than 13 countries. And the geographical scope of abduction is quite broad. It goes from Kenya, Kyrgyzstan, Cambodia, Azerbaijan, Moldova, Malaysia, Gabon, Tajikistan. And we also documented attempts in Central America and in Europe. And well, you may know that the primary targets of these abductions are sympathizers of the Hizmet movement, also known as the Gulcan movement, which is a Turkish faith-based charity and educational movement. And it is also quite notorious that President Recep Tayyip Erdogan blamed this movement for the July 2016 coup attempt. And since then, we all know that the persecution has not stopped, including, as Vonia has been mentioning, for those with only minor connection to the movement. It's been constantly intensifying. After ages now, we are still witnessing no sign of improvement. And on the contrary, regarding abroad abduction, it still continues to occur on average, I would say, 2 or 3 incidents per year. And this actually led Freedom House, to label Turkey as a champion of transnational repression. And indeed, unfortunately, Turkey is right now a model, I would say, for any authoritarian regime in this regard. And what is even more remarkable is that the Turkish authorities do not even shy away from those actions. For instance, back to March 2018, after the abduction of 6 teachers from Kosovo, President Erdogan himself stated, "Wherever they may go, we will wrap up them and bring them here." And same in 2021, after the abduction of Orhan Nandi from Kyrgyzstan, same President Erdogan actually gave praises the MIT for the abduction. And the pattern of abduction is now very well established. In most cases, this involves the consent and the support of local authorities. And all operations we've been reviewing demonstrate a very swift, a very well-prepared organization. The victims are always also kept away, from the ordinary detention system, so they cannot benefit of the normal extradition, deportation, due process rules. And also, in all cases we've been reviewing, almost immediately after the abduction, the victims are put on a Turkish plane, either private military plane, sometimes Turkish airline plane. And as been mentioned by Vonya, many of us have been working on the latest case in Kenya. So you may know it's most probably the best illustration. On the morning of October 18, 2024, 7 Turkish nationals were abducted in Nairobi, although they had the refugee status, and all at the same time. All those people related to the Ismet movement, and this was coordinated operation conducted in broad daylight by Kenyan National Intelligence Agency. So we got Öztürk Uzun, Hussein Yeşilsu, 2 Turkish nationals that were stopped while driving to the office, abducted by masked men. Same for Mustafa Cenk. He was in a car with his son, his wife, his 2 girls, and him and his son were actually taken by masked individuals. Same for Necdet Seyitoğlu, which actually is a dual Turkish and British national, and same for Arslan and Saadet Tashif. So 4 of these people were immediately rendered to the MIT, the Turkish intelligence services, on the very same day, unfortunately. And well, it's a pattern that is well known. The European Court of Human Rights found in the cases regarding abduction in Moldova that also those operations were prepared well in advance in order to completely surprise the victims, as I said, to totally avoid them to benefit from due process protections that could actually prevent them from being transferred to Turkey. So those cases are clear examples of multiple human rights violations Turkey is accountable for. So first of all, those cases, it's very clear, are enforced disappearances. These people are voluntarily deprived of their liberty at the hands of Turkish agents or host country agents. They are subtracted from the protection of the law, and their relatives are deprived of any kind of information. In addition, those cases, most of the time, also reveal violation of prohibition of torture. Most of the abductees were surfaced with clear signs of torture, as for Mr. Orhan Nandi. But it is also a clear violation of the right to liberty and security. So those people are kept in incommunicado detention without any opportunity to meet a lawyer, to know the charges against them, to be presented before a judge. For instance, the case of Mr. Orhan Nandi has been abducted in Bishkek in Kyrgyzstan on May 30. And for quite a long time, we believe that he was actually kept in the Turkish embassy in Bishkek. But no, actually, on the very same day, he was put in a car, transferred to a neighboring country, and then flying to Turkey. And he reappeared only on July 5th, which means more than a month after his abduction. And he was kept and tortured in an unknown place. And also truly remarkable that the Turkish judiciary authorities totally disregard the events that occurred before the resurface. In the case of Nandi, for instance, the criminal FAIS mentioned that he was arrested on July 5. So totally disregarding what happened between 30th of May and 5th of July. And I also believe that those cases of transnational repression should be considered as some kind of aggravated violation of human rights. Because, the logic of human rights is quite clear. States should actually deploy efforts, to respect their obligations. In those cases of transnational repression, and particularly foreign abduction, states are reversing the logic. They actually deploy efforts, they actually deploy resources to violate their human rights obligation. It's quite remarkable, actually. And now, since I know we're short in time, I would like to dedicate actually at least a few minutes to the UN human rights mechanisms and how those mechanisms are responding to this systematic practice of abroad abduction. And first of all, as a kind of preliminary introductory remarks, I would like to mention that since 2016, there have been a huge increase in the actions, in the answers of UN mechanisms against Turkey. For instance, regarding the ICCPR, the Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, Turkey ratified it in 2003 and ratified the first optional protocol in 2006. You know, this protocol allows victims to lodge individual complaints against Turkey. And it's quite remarkable that between 2007 and 2016, only 2 individual complaints were registered by the Human Rights Committee against Turkey. In comparison, between 2017 and 2024, at least 45 complaints were registered, most of them related to the post-coup patent violation. So unfair trial, unfair conviction, based on vague counterterrorism legal frameworks, unfair dismissal, and for disappearance, death in custody, but also abroad abduction. And the committee, since 2016, already rendered 3 violation decisions. One is very famous, Ms. Alakush versus Turkey, Mr. Achikolu versus Turkey, but also Oshekelik versus Turkey, which is a case of abduction from Malaysia. Similarly to the UN treaty bodies, the UN special procedures also will witness a big increase in the communication. So for instance, since between March 2011 to July 2016, the special procedures sent 32 communications to Turkey. It means 1 communication per 2 months. In comparison, only between 2016 to July 2024, we had 106 communications sent to Turkey, which is equivalent of 1 communication per month. And here, I would like to draw your attention to the latest 20 pages letter that was sent to Turkey on October 7, 2024. It was made public last Friday. And the UN special procedures actually made it clear and drafted a letter concerning those measures of systematic repression against sympathizers of the Ismet movement through the misuse of counterterrorism. It is actually, and that's why also I mentioned it, it is a result of a lot of collective efforts, collective reporting, collective advocacy. The special rapporteur highlighted that the designation of the Ismet movement as a terrorist organization could not meet the due process requirement or satisfy the model definition of terrorism. It's very, very huge. And in addition, in this 20 pages letter that I can share with you, Afsa, the special rapporteur actually covered multiple violations against the Ismet movement sympathizers. So echoing Vonia, we're talking about the grey list, about bylaw, about arbitrary detention, but also transnational renditions.
Yeah.
So quite an important document for all of the people working on the situation in Turkey.
Yeah.
And also, Afza, would you like me maybe to shorten the rest of my presentation?
I think you touched on really important things, and the last thing that you've been talking about, you know what, Elodie, there is always this question as, human rights advocates that we've been working on the field, or journalists or other, people who are committed to, fight against these injustices. We hear this question out, okay, you're writing reports, you're, posting social media posts, so what? We see that there are a lot of people still in prisons, or there is no freedom of expression still in Turkey. But unfortunately, these are things or violations and atrocities that committed by states with a huge power. And fighting against them takes much time, takes much effort, but there is no chance that we can give up. There is no way. So as just you mentioned that this collective efforts, collective advocacy all across the world, you from, Switzerland, yeah, I'm always confused with these 2 countries. So you from Switzerland, Eren and Gulcan from Turkey, Michael from UK, we from, America, a lot of people, why are you from America, and all other people, thousands of people are putting these efforts against a huge, powerful state. And the last report that you've been mentioning, I saw it, and I saw the Turkish government's response to this, report. It was, I'll share it again through AST is on my personal account. I think 12, right? Special rapporteurs, their all efforts and, observations on the ongoing human rights violations in Turkey. This is very important to be recognized, that you are going through. We have to go ahead. There is no other way that, just sitting down and giving up. So human rights work is not easy. It takes time and it takes, courage. And yeah, thank you so much, Elodie, for all this.
If I may conclude, just
Yes,
a few words to conclude.
I'm so sorry.
Actually,
I'm so sorry. It has taken, longer than we expected. And I
yeah.
think it's, I don't know, 7 in Turkey. I cannot. And Eren has been waiting for a long time. So if you could, one
Yeah,
sentence.
I know. I know. Yeah, as you've been mentioning, it's a hard job, this human rights advocacy we're doing, but better than being silent. And we
Yes.
see actually the results, although it takes a lot of time. I had a lot to share, especially 2024 has been a very impressive year regarding UN human rights mechanism, mainly treaty bodies and Turkey. We got the Human Rights Committee concluding observation, making very strong recommendation on transnational repression. The same with the Committee Against Torture, with very precise recommendation asking Turkey to stop abduction of Hizmet movement. Very funny to see that actually Turkey felt the urge, to respond, which is a very exceptional practice, saying that mentioning the movement as Hizmet movement is actually an abuse and it should be mentioned as veto, But just to conclude, Human Rights Committee has developed a very interesting practice, meaning that when we have cases of abduction, although we don't know the fate of the person, we manage to get those cases registered very quickly and to get interim measures. So I give you an example regarding the Kenyan cases. People have been abducted Friday, 18th of October. Monday, 20th of October, we were actually submitting a case to Human Rights Committee, and Tuesday, 21st of October, it was registered. So it's a way to increase pressure on Turkey. This happened for Inandi, this happened for Koray Vural, this happened for the Kenyan cases. And it also demonstrates that all the effort that we're making to actually demonstrate this pattern of abduction is actually paying,
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And what you said is very related to Eren's, topics, ongoing enforced disappearances, both at home and also transnational. We have Eren Baskın, who holds degrees in economics and law. And since 2013, Eren has been an active member of the Saturday Mothers Initiative, Cumartesi Anneleri in Turkish, under the Human Rights Association's Istanbul branch. He also served on the executive board of the Human Rights Association in Hakkari branch in 2019 and continues to serve as an executive board for both the Hakkari branch and Association of Lawyers for Freedom in Hakkari. Now I'm going to tell something very interesting about Eren. Due to a lawsuit stemming from a tweet on Twitter in 2018, initiated by then Interior Minister, very infamous Minister Süleyman Soylu, his bar license was revoked. Actually, he's a lawyer. But Eren is currently awaiting the resolution of his application to reinstate his license, does not yet hold the title of lawyer under Turkish law. Yeah, Eren, again, I'm truly sorry that you had to wait for a long time, but all these, a very, collective and, holistic thing that we are trying to focus on. I'm very interested in what you're going to say about your own fight against these enforced disappearances. And again, Eren İl is going to speak Turkish, and we have our interpreter to help us.
Merhaba, öncelikle hepinize merhabalar, saygılar, iyi akşamlar diliyorum. Tabii şimdi siz de biraz önce bahsettiğiniz gibi sistemin mağdurlarından biriyim. Önce kendimden bahsetmeden önce 10 dakika içinde biraz da işte başımıza gelmiş ya da mücadele ettiğimiz alan hukuksuzluk kavramıyla ilgili, mücadele ettiğimiz alanla ilgili hepinize biraz bilgi vermek isterim. İzleyicilerimize biraz bilgi vermek istiyorum. Onun için şimdi sunumuma başlayacağım.
Okay, hello to everyone. So I am also a victim of this system, and I would like to tell you about my struggle against the state of lawlessness in Turkey. So I will now start my presentation.
Aslına bakarsanız bu hikaye benim kendi hikayem değil. Bu benim babamın hikayesi. Benim babam Abdülmecit Baskın Ankara Altındağ Nüfus Müdürü görevindeyken 1993 yılında 30 Eylül 1993 yılında gözaltına alınarak katledildi.
Well, actually, this isn't my story. It's the story of my father, Abdülmecit Baskın, who was a state registrar in Altındağ. And on the 30th of September 1993, he was taken.
Evet, babam öldürüldüğünde 41 yaşındaydı. Ben de henüz o yıllarda henüz 4 yaşındaydım.
He was actually killed, and I was 4 years old at the time.
Hayatım boyunca doğal olarak bir eksiklik hissetmekle beraber doğal olarak bir hukuk mücadelesi içine girdik. Asla kendimizi geri çekmedik. Ben de ölüm, öldürme, faili meçhul cinayet bu gibi terimlerle çok erken yaşta tanışmış oldum.
And of course, I always missed my father. I grew up with a great lack, a great absence. But we always continued to struggle to find some justice. And it's at a very young age that I became familiar with words such as abductions, such as disappearance, such as unsolved murders.
Evet. Şimdi biraz önce Gülcan'ı da dinledik. Onun hikayesine de çok vakıfım, çok da iyi biliyorum. Kendi açımdan söylüyorum. Büyüme olanaklarımız şöyle, sevinç yani artık sevinç, mutluluk, gözyaşı gibi duygularla da bile bazı şeyleri kendimize sevinç kaynağı yapabiliyoruz. Keza babam öldürüldükten sonra biz 4 gün içinde cenazesini bulabilmiştik ama henüz cenazesine ulaşamayan yüzlerce aile var.
And so I have to tell you that I listened to Gülcan's story, and I know that story very well. And all of us, we grow in a very strange way. We don't really have the opportunity to grow. The way we feel joy, way we cry, it's all very different for us. For example, after my father was killed, we found his body only after 4 days, but there are many people who can't reach bodies of their loved ones, of their disappeared ones.
Evet, tabii böyle bir konu konuşulduğu zaman akla ilk gelen soru şu oluyor. Neden? Neden Mecit Baskın öldürülmüş olabilir? Aslına bakarsanız insan hakları kavramına, insan hakları hukuku kavramına yakın insanlar herhangi bir şekilde buna neden diye bir soru sormazlar. Öncelikli olarak bu işin yanlış olduğunu ve bir insanın her ne sebeple olursa olsun öldürülmemesi gerektiği üzerine bir portre çizilir. Bir de bugün 32. yılımızı yaşıyoruz babamı kaybettiğimden dolayı, yani kaybettikten sonra 32 yılda her zaman sorduğumuz soru buydu aslında bir türlü. Neden? Ne oldu? Ne için öldürüldü sorusuydu.
So the first question we asked, and the question that we've been asking for the 32 years since my father's been killed, is why? But actually, in any other country where there's a consciousness of this concept of human rights, people won't ask why. They'll first of all say this is wrong, whatever the reason. You just don't kill somebody. But we're always wondering, why was my father killed? Why was Mecit Baskın killed?
Buna karşı herhangi bir donemiz yoktu elimizde. Sadece içten içe bildiğimiz kadarıyla ben de çok hani çocuk yaştan bu durumla vakıf olduğum için hep bir devlet bekası, devletin bekası yüzünden, devlet için, devlet tarafından diye bir cümle. Asla isimler ya da bir kişiyle karşı karşıya kalmadık. Tek bildiğimiz bir şey vardı. Bunu devlet yaptı.
And we never had any data about this. There were no facts. But the only thing that kept coming back was that this was done by the state, that it was done so that the state could survive. There were no names, no individuals, only the state.
Evet. Ardından bir süre geçtikten sonra yani kendimi bir tanımlamaya başladıktan sonra artık bir birey olarak bu işlerin içeriğini öğrenmeye başladıktan sonra devlet içinde kümeleşmiş bir grubun asla ve asla ne kadar kan kaybederse kaybetsin, ne kadar düşerse düşsün asla yok olmayacak bir grubun bu gibi cinayetleri tamamen siyasi sahiplerle işlediğini gördük, anladık ve bildik ve artık elimizde bunları yapanların isimleri de vardı.
after a while, I grew up and I started to be able to learn and understand as an individual. And I saw that this had been perpetrated by a group organized within the state. And now we have certain names.
Tabii dediğim gibi kendimi tanımlamaya başladıktan sonra cumartesi anneleriyle tanıştım. Cumartesi anneleriyle tanışmamın sebebi de benim gibi yarım bırakılmış, eksik bırakılmış babaları, annesi, kardeşi, abisi, amcası bir türlü sevdikleri katledilmiş insanlar her cumartesi günü saat 12'de İstanbul'da Galatasaray Lisesi'nin önünde, Galatasaray Meydanı'nda acılarını beşer dakikalık, 10'ar dakikalık dünyanın en uzun soluklu ve en barışçıl gösterilerinden bir tanesini gerçekleştiriyorlardı. Ben de ailelerle bütünleştim ve onlarla tanışma imkanım oldu. Bugün çok büyük bir ailem var.
And so I had the opportunity to meet Saturday mothers who meet every single Saturday at 12 o'clock on Galatasaray Square. And who meet because they're people like me who have lost their relatives, their fathers, their sisters, their brothers, their cousins, and who are there for 5 minutes, for 10 minutes. And it's the most longest running protest on earth. And so I joined them, and now I have the hugest family imaginable.
Hayatımda çok büyük bir yer kapladı cumartesi anneleri. Bunun bir sebebi vardı gerçi. Tabii ki ben kendim dediğim gibi babam katledildiğinde ben henüz 5 yaşındaydım ve doğal olarak bu dünyadaki belki yaşanılabilecek acıların en büyüğü kendimde diyebiliyordum. Ama ne zaman ki Galatasaray Meydanı'nda oturmaya başladım, başka insanların da çok büyük acılar yaşadığını, gerçek anlamda çok büyük sıkıntılar yaşadığını, mezarlarını çiçeklerle donatabilecekleri bir mezar yerleri olması için 20 senedir, 25 senedir soğuk betonlar üzerinde oturan anneleri görünce gerçek anlamda bütün insanlık için bu çalışmalara katılmayı öngördüm ve bunlara katıldım.
And these Saturday protests took up a huge part in my life. It's very important for me because, as I said, I was very young when my father was killed, and I thought that this was the worst pain imaginable. I met the Saturday mothers, and I saw that there are many people who share my pain. There are mothers who've been sitting on this cold cement for 20 years, hoping to just find a body, to have a cemetery, a tomb where they can take some flowers.
Evet, babamı katledenlerle savaşmak için, onların ifşası için meydanlarda her hafta sonu meydanlarda elimde babamın fotoğrafıyla katledilenlerin akıbetini sordum. Akabinde Türkiye'de dava zaman aşımı 20 yıldır cinayetten dolayı da bir cinayet yargısı sonucu da 30 yıllık bir zaman dilimi gerekir bir dosyanın kapatılması için. Eğer bir dava varsa 30 yıllık bir zaman aşımı vardır. Eğer hiç dava açılmadıysa 20 yıllık bir zaman aşımı vardır. 20 yıllık zaman aşımı süresinin bitmesine sadece 11 gün kala bir eski özel harekat polisinin gidip İstanbul'da vermiş olduğu ifadeyle Mecit Baskın'ı biz öldürdük demesiyle bir soruşturma başlatıldı.
So in Turkey, the statute of limitations is of 30 years if there's a court case running. But if there are no court cases, it's only 20 years. And there were only 11 days left until the statute of limitations would be reached in the case of my father. And it's when an ex-policeman, an ex-mobilization policeman finally confessed to the killing of my father, that we were able to take action.
Evet, kesinlikle hayatımı babamın katillerinin bulunmasına adamış olsam da şu anki bütün hedef ve gayem bu 30 yıllık zaman aşımı süresinin tamamen egale edilmesi. Şu sebeple Avrupa Birliği uyum süreci kapsamında bazı hukuki girişimler yapıldı. Avrupa Birliği tarafından Türkiye bazı maddelerde Türk hukukuna girişi için bazı önermeler yapıldı. Bütün önermelerin hemen hemen %98, %99'u kabul edilmesine rağmen gözaltında insan kaybetme suçunun bir farklı bir olay olduğuna ilişkin bir başlangıç olduğu için ne olursa olsun buna bir kanun olarak zaman aşımı sınırının ortadan kaldırılmasını talep edildi. Ama Türkiye maalesef bu maddeye de çekince koydu.
And so I have been struggling to find the perpetrators of this murder against my father my whole life. And now I'm trying to have this 30 years statute of limitations be done away with because Turkey, during the harmonization process with the European Union, had to accept certain recommendations when it came to laws. And although they accepted 98% of these legal recommendations stemming from the EU, they still don't want to accept the laws regarding death under custody. They still want to retain the statute of limitations when it comes to these cases.
Ee, 2011 yılında başlatılan soruşturma, tekrar davaya dönüyorum. 2011 yılında başlatılan soruşturma 2013 yılında faili meçhul cinayetler davası olarak kamuoyunun da şu an bir kısmının bildiği üzere faili meçhul cinayetler davası olarak açıldı ve sanık sandalyesine eski İçişleri Bakanlığı'nda, İçişleri Bakanlığı, Adalet Bakanlığı'nda ve Emniyet Genel Müdürlüğü yapmış Mehmet Ağar, Korkut Eken, İbrahim Şahin ve 11 tane özel harekat polisi üzerinden kurulan silahlı örgütün faaliyetleri kapsamında bir dava açıldı ve ağırlaştırılmış müebbet hapis istemiyle yargılandılar.
And so the court case began in 2011. The investigation began in 2011. And in 2013, court case began to investigate these unsolved as an unsolved murder. And the defendants were the ex-Minister of the Interior and I'm sorry, the interpreter couldn't understand who they were. Eski İçişleri Bakanı dediniz.
Mehmet, evet. Hem de Adalet Bakanlığı'nda görev almış. Ayrıca eski Emniyet Genel Müdürü.
So Mehmet was Mehmet Ağar, who was the ex-Minister of the Interior, but also who was a Minister of the Ministry of Justice, and also the I'm sorry,
Lütfen
also the General
sorabilirsiniz.
Directorate of Security. He was also the General Director of Security. There was Ibrahim Şahin, and also many officers of the Mobilization Police. And they were accused of being members of an armed organization, and they were actually being tried for life imprisonment.
Dediğim gibi bu kişiler ağırlaştırılmış müebbet hapis sistemiyle yargılandılar. Davanın ilk dönemlerinde aslına bakarsanız biz çok umutluyduk. Ben de kendimi hiçbir zaman bu bakıma aslında affetmedim. Çünkü ben de inandım. İnandım, bu insanların gerçek anlamda bir yüzleşme kelimesi aslında ilk defa bu dönemde ortaya çıktı. İnsanlar yüzleşecekler, acılarıyla karşılaşacaklar. Bunun altyapısı da dönemin başbakanı sıfatıyla Recep Tayyip Erdoğan, annelerimizden herkesin hikayesini bildiği Berfu Ana ile bir görüşme yaptı. Berfu Ana, herkesin, kamuoyu bilir, işte evimin duvarlarını boyamadım, çocuğumun bir gün döner gelir diye beklediği Cemil Kırbayır'ın annesi. O gün orada sözler verildi. Bugün yine hani burada konuştuğumuz için Gülcan'a atıfta bulunuyorum. Lütfen kusura bakmayın şu anlamda. 34 yıl sonra, tam 34 yıl sonra yapılan görüşme sonucunda 34 yıldır tek bir ismin geçilmediği dosyada Berfu Kırbayır'ın girişimleri sonucu oğlu Cemil Kırbayır'ı öldüren polisin adı dava kayıtlarına geçti ve cenazesinin bulunması için büyük bir araştırma yapıldı. Bakın, tam 34 yıl sonra, ama biz bugün geldiğimiz noktada maalesef 5 yıl önce katledilmiş ya da İnşallah farklı bir durum vardır da bir insanın henüz cenazesini bulamıyoruz. Yani bir mezar yeri bulamıyoruz ve onun mezarını çiçeklerle donatabileceğimiz bir yer, bir alan bulamıyoruz.
I will always blame myself because I was actually optimistic about this process. I thought that these people, these perpetrators, would actually confront their pain, confront what they had done to us. And if I was optimistic, it was because the then Prime Minister Erdogan gave us reason to be optimistic. After 34 years, he gave certain promises to Berfu Kırbayır, the mother of Cemil Kırbayır, who had been lost 34 years ago. He said that he would do all the investigations needed to find his body and to bring the police to trial, and that he would find which police had done this. And he actually put the names, he enabled the investigators to put the names of the police who had perpetrated this murder into the registers. And this is just incredible, because he was able to do this for a murder that had been perpetrated 34 years ago. And now today, Gulcan told us about her parents were not able to find the bodies of people who were killed only 5 years ago.
Aslına bakarsanız hepimiz bir devlet aklının mağdurlarıyız. Zaman ve sınırlama yok. 90'lı yılların bu karanlık dehlizlerinden 2000'li yıllardaki farklı durumlar, Yani Cumhuriyet öncesi, Cumhuriyet sonrasından gelinen noktada her insan mutlak surette farklı sebeplerle bu ülkede mağdur edildi. Biz de mağdur çocuklarıyız, mağdurlarız ama bunun için tabii ki çalışmaya devam ediyoruz.
And actually, if you really look at it, we are all, each and every one of us, victims of the state, whether these things happen before the Republic or after the Republic, when we see what happened in the 90s and the 2000s, each and everybody, one of us is a victim. We're all children of victims, but we're not going to stop the struggle.
Şunu açık yürekli söyleyebilirim. Bu cümleyi de çok kullanıyorum. Gerçek anlamda bir hakkım olup olmadığını bilmiyorum. Çünkü ailemin diğer bireyleri de var. Bence onlar da aynı düşünüyordur. Ben babamın öldürülmesi olayına katlanabilirim ve affedebilirim. Yeter ki bundan sonra bir daha gözaltında bir kayıp olmasın. Ve sadece istediğim bu devletten sadece istediğim bir özür.
There's something that I always repeat. I don't know if I have a right to anything I mean, I'm not alone in my family. There are other individuals, but I think that they will agree with me that I say I can forgive whoever killed my father, but all I want is that no other people are killed or lost when they're under detention, and I would like the state to apologize for what is done.
Konuyu çok dağıtmadan sadece mahkeme aşamasında yaşamış olduğumuz ağır hak ihlallerinden çok ufak olarak bahsetmek isterim. Dediğim gibi 2013 yılında açılan davada biz sanıkların daha önceden de aynı suçtan dolayı, mesela Mehmet Ağar daha öncesinde Aydın'da kendisine özel yapılmış bir cezaevinde yatıyordu ve şartlı tahliye ile tahliye olmuştu. Yine aynı bakıma bir ceza davası daha açılınca doğal olarak denetimi bozulacağından tekrar cezaevine girmesi gerekiyordu. Ben bugün gelinen noktada Mehmet Ağar'ın Türkiye sınırları içinde düzgün bir yargıyla yargılanabileceğine inanmıyorum. Şu sebeple düşünün ki cezaevine girmiş, Yargıtay tarafından cezası onanmış, silahlı bir örgüt faaliyetleri kapsamında tutuklanmış bir insanın cezaevinden çıktıktan sonra denetimi bozulması gerekiyorken ve hakkında ağırlaştırılmış müebbet hapis sistemiyle dava açılmışken bir önceki davası için gidip Yargıtay Cumhuriyet Başsavcılığına olağanüstü yollar üzerine bir başvuru yaptı ve ilk suçundan beraat kararı aldırdı ve bunların hepsi 42 günde oldu.
So I'd like to go back to the court case, which was started in 2011. So the defendant, Mehmet Ağar, was already at that point in the especially created jail for him in Aydın. And he was taken out on parole to be able to go on trial with us. So since he had perpetrated this murder, he would have had to go back to jail. And I don't think that someone like Mehmet Ağar can actually have a decent trial in Turkey because can you imagine that the Supreme Court of Justice in Turkey had actually accepted that he was a member of an armed organization. And then
Eren Bey, I'm so
Evet.
sorry. Bir sonraki session başlayacağı için linke giremediklerinden bir cümleyle toplayabilirseniz
Tamam,
bitiririz.
hemen şöyle
Kusura
tamam
bakmayın.
şöyle.
and then he
Yok,
was
estağfurullah.
acquitted. Yes. Okay.
I'm
But
so
then
sorry.
the
I'm so sorry.
prosecutor, I'm sorry. Okay. So
Tamam,
I'll
şöyle.
stop.
Dediğim gibi davada birçok tanıklık, birçok gerçeklik olmasına rağmen bu şahıslar hakkında beraat kararları verildi. Beraat kararları Yargıtay tarafından onandı. Anayasa Mahkemesi başvurumuzu yaptık ama biz bu davanın Türkiye'de görülmesini istiyoruz. Avrupa İnsan Hakları Mahkemesi'nin vermiş olduğu kararlar tabii ki çok önemlidir. Ama ne olursa olsun konusu para olan bir konunun içine girmek istemiyorum. Bu dava Türkiye'de çözülmesi gerekiyor.
And yes, the Supreme Court of Justice in Turkey actually acquitted this person from his first crime, and all this happened in only 42 days. Of course, the European Court of Human Rights decisions are very important, but we want this trial to be seen in Turkey. We want this to be solved in Turkey, and not only through financial means. This must be resolved here. Thank you.
So what Eren actually told us, I mean, a lot of important things, but I have to mention two things which is very important to me as well. So you said that we are always talking about devlet, I mean state, as if it's a ghost, as if there are no specific perpetrators. We have to find names behind these, crimes. So that's very important to, follow through the processes. So that these people can be held accountable. Who is devlet? Who is state? As a ghost, they're just there. Nobody knows, right? So another thing that you were talking about is the collective, healing process, collective fight process, coming together as Sadure mothers. Yes, my pain and my case is very huge to me, but there are other cases. So if we come together with unity and solidarity from across the world, that actually would accelerate the processes and also heal the trauma that people go through. So I have to close this session because the other one is gonna be starting in 4 minutes. And I really thank all the speakers for their really remarkable inputs and sharing their, really sharing their experiences as well. And as I see, there are experts here from abroad, and there are people here who are persecuted, coming together, connecting them together. I think it's gonna be the most powerful and productive outcomes of this panel too. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the second panel. And good luck with all the work that you've been doing. Thank you.
Shrinking freedoms, rising responsibilities. Be the voice for human rights. Exploring the crossroads of freedom and foreign policy. Join the conversation. Justice and democracy for Turkey. Save the date, December 10th, 2020.